Let's pick it up, from the point of the first question then.
Okay.
Explain to us. I mentioned the fact that Bleeding Heartland was excluded from the governor's news conferences, but your part-time reporter status with this community radio station up in Ames, KHOI, allowed you to get in. So explain to us again how that happened.
Well, the governor's office for the past couple of years had denied me access to the press conferences on the grounds that I wasn't credentialed in the Iowa House. And the Iowa House never had a written credentialing policy before 2019 when they denied me credentials, and then about a month after that developed a policy, and their policy says you have to be employed by a news organization that blah 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 that apply, and so it applies to basically print, radio, TV, or online. And I contended that just in my work for Bleeding Heartland, that I should qualify for credentials, that I met the terms of the House credentialing policy. But that wasn't the way the Republicans in control of the Iowa House saw it, and the governor's office deferred to them. Well, this year, ostensibly because of the coronavirus pandemic, the Iowa House didn't credential any reporters. And I started working late last year, signed an employment agreement with KHOI Radio. We've been doing the show since early February. I've been reporting weekly for them on what's happening at the State House, the legislature, the governor's office, campaigns and elections. And so I was ready with a letter confirming my employment with KHOI, with a press badge. And when I attempted to attend the governor's press conference in July, as we discussed recently on one of your programs, I was denied access, even though I was able to present those materials and also illustrate that the Iowa House hadn't credentialed anyone for this year. So, but KHOI's program director wrote to the governor's office. Also, the Randy Evans, who's been on your program before, Iowa Freedom of Information Council, he wrote to the governor's office, and the president of the Institute for Free Speech, that's a national organization based in Washington, also wrote to the governor's office on my behalf. And last week, we got the word from Pat Garrett, who's the governor's communications director, that in my capacity as KHOI's correspondent, I would be allowed to cover the governor's news conferences. So I was able to enter the governor's office suite on last Thursday for her press conference with no issues. And that was different from before, when I had been physically blocked from entering her press conferences.
So what's the final verdict from your angle? Are you going to give them a pass on this? Or
well, no. I mean, I still think, I don't really believe that it was legitimate for the governor's office to deny access to Bleeding Heartland. I certainly think that my work, my thousands of articles and commentaries published in the last 14 years, and I produce a substantial amount of original reporting on state government for Bleeding Heartland. So I certainly think that I deserve to have access through that. But also, I mean, I am providing original news analysis and commentary for KHOI. So I think that if that's the way they want to see it, I mean, for now, that's okay with me. I'm proud to report for KHOI. It's really a great station, and they produce a lot of good content. They also have, they syndicate some national shows through Radio Pacifica, and that's very valuable. They're the only source for that in Central Iowa.
Radio Pacifica. I mean, they've got some great content, obviously. I think they also air Amy Goodman up there with Democracy Now!, so that's a great thing. Ames is a great place to work. I used to be on radio up there, KASI AM and KCCQ FM, way back in the day, and Ames was a great place to live. Still is, as a matter of fact. I mean, that's a great community.
Yeah, my co-host Dennis Hart has worked all over the country, but he and his wife chose to retire in Ames, and he's been volunteering for KHOI for the last few years. Yeah, it is really a nice place.
Well, set the stage for us a little bit. So you're allowed to get into this news conference, but there's one thing that's interesting about it, and I got this again from reading Bleeding Heartland. Here we are in the midst of a pandemic, and everybody's got questions. Everybody needs leadership. Everybody's looking for a steady hand on the till, and we ain't exactly having fireside chats in this state of Iowa from our governor. It's been a while since she had a news conference that dealt solely with the pandemic, correct?
Correct. She was in the early months of the pandemic. She was having press conferences almost every weekday, and then that switched to once or twice a week last summer. And for much of last fall, she was having press conferences once a week, occasionally twice. But really, since early this year, she's hardly had any news conferences about the pandemic. She's tried to change the subject. She lifted all the business restrictions and capacity restrictions in February. And she has repeatedly encouraged Iowans to get life back to normal. And the Iowa Department of Public Health, also, they downgraded the reporting on the state website. They used to update it daily. starting in early July. They updated it only once a week. They took a lot of information off of that, and they've encouraged schools and other businesses to treat COVID-19 like other illnesses, like the flu. And so really the governor wants to continually encourage Iowans to just think of this pandemic as mostly over and something that we just have to live with. Even if the virus is still here, it's just something we have to live with. And it's not like a special emergency. Although technically her disaster emergency proclamations are still in effect, she's not encouraging Iowans to view it as an emergency situation anymore. And that's why it had been such a long time since she had had a news conference devoted to this, even though you can see that it's been dominating the headlines almost every day all summer.
Well, let's go to the videotape, as they say in the sports world. And I've got some video clips here, and we did have some difficulty here at the beginning making sure that this was getting on the Facebook platform. I think we're on there now. I want to bring these clips up, and Laura, I want you to jump in here. Just start to talk anytime, and I'll stop the video, and I'll do the same here because, I mean, I tried to come up with some questions about every sentence or so. I mean, I've got a question or a comment on this thing.
Yeah.
But let's take a look here and see if I can bring this up and see if this works for us.
Iowa, along with much.
Okay, so here it is. It started already, but can you hear that all right? Did you hear that, Laura? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the beginning, and there's the gov. And who's this dude over here? This is this Garrett guy? I mean, who is this?
No, this is the Lieutenant Governor, Adam Gregg. And this is the funny
okay.
thing. The governor has not given Adam Gregg very much to do throughout this pandemic. And it's often happened that he's been standing there at her press conferences, but he's not invited to speak about anything, and he doesn't answer any questions. So it's not clear why he's there. I wondered that myself. I thought that perhaps he was going to say something to the media, but he was just there.
So, I had to wonder who this man in waiting was that was standing over there. It's interesting. Is she trying to introduce him, get him out a little bit because she might have other political plans? And again, what's the book that he's holding here? Is that the Iowa Code?
I couldn't tell what kind of briefing book he was holding. I mean, I feel like it's almost the opposite. If you watched Governor Branstad's press conferences when Kim Reynolds was the lieutenant governor, he gave her a lot to do, and he often invited her to speak, and he often put her in charge of initiatives. And she really doesn't give Adam Gregg very much to do at all. I mean, during this whole pandemic, I think he's only spoken at a couple of press conferences. So I found that strange that he hasn't had more of a prominent public role anyway in the pandemic response. And my impression is that behind the scenes also, he doesn't seem to be one of the key people involved along the way when they've had meetings to discuss the various aspects of the pandemic response.
I didn't know whether to laugh or feel sorry for the guy. I'm looking at him thinking, well, maybe he's going to start signing here. You know, they always have that person off to the side.
They used to have that.
Yeah, but no, he's just standing there holding a book. Okay. So we're going to play this through, like I mentioned, but I got so many questions. This whole thing is strange to me. One thing that I never liked as a reporter, and it always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it's changed, and maybe that's not the way that this is, but she's got prepared remarks to open with here. And I used to always sit there and think, well, wait a minute. If those remarks are prepared, why don't I have them? Because I can put together some better questions, more insightful questions, if I know what she's going to say. And of course, what the implication is, well, no, this is fast action. She just came up with these. There wasn't time for that. And I'd sit there and think, hell, you could have done this yesterday. I mean, there's plenty of time to look at these prepared remarks. Did you have a chance to go through these before she spoke?
No, they didn't provide those to the media. They never provide her prepared remarks to the media. And she does almost always start press conferences with prepared remarks. And you can see from the beginning, she's really reading. She's not looking up from that script very much, those first 3 minutes or so.
All right. Okay. So let's play a little of this, and hopefully everybody can hear it. Here we go.
You know, Iowa, along with much of the nation, is experiencing an increase in virus activity due to the more contagious Delta variant, which now accounts for 99% of new cases in the state.
Okay, so there I go. That's question number one. I heard that, Lauren. I thought, well, wait a minute. Yeah, the Delta variant is more contagious, and it is responsible for the cases that we're getting now, but maybe just as responsible, which goes without mention here, is the fact that we're not getting vaccinated at a higher rate than we are. And of course, also, I think because people aren't wearing masks like they should be, and they're going on about their regular daily lives in a pandemic. I mean, am I overstating that? Or
no, not at all. I mean, we've seen the Delta variant is far more transmissible, especially among children. And so one of the main questions on my mind is why, knowing that the 99% of new cases are the Delta variant, why are they not doing more to promote mask wearing? Even if they can't mandate it in schools, they should certainly be encouraging it, because we knew already last year that wearing masks in schools reduced transmission. And that was with the original coronavirus variant, which was far less transmissible than the Delta one.
Well, it's easy to blame it on um, a virus than policy, I guess. I mean, that's kind of the way that struck me. But let's keep this rolling here.
So today, what I thought I would do is try to put the latest information about the virus in context while discussing what we all could do to continue managing the virus within the normal course of our daily life. Over 18 months.
Okay, so I heard that, and I'm thinking this is what you were talking about earlier. She's adamant about the fact that we should be going on about our daily lives. And I look at it in the pandemic and say, no, this is not normal. This is not regular. You cannot conduct yourself in a pandemic like you normally would when it's not a pandemic. That's the big problem. I mean, to me, you got to get vaccinated. You don't do that when it isn't a pandemic, and you got to wear a mask. I mean, you got to social distance. You might not patronize some places. You might even close some businesses. You might even have a mask mandate. She doesn't want to do any of those things. So that's what I take from that.
She does encourage vaccinations, but she's right. As of a few months ago, she just started putting all of her eggs in the vaccination basket, and she just doesn't talk about masks at all. And in fact, when the CDC changed its guidelines in July, when they found evidence that even some fully vaccinated people were transmitting the Delta variant, and they started recommending masks in indoor public places, even for vaccinated people, the governor was very critical of that. So she said that there was no scientific basis for it, even though there really is. They're changing their guidance based on data, and she doesn't even recommend masks for unvaccinated people. I mean, it's really astounding that when we have transmission as high as we do now in almost all 99 counties, and hospitals are filling up rapidly, we're not hearing more from the governor about how we need to reduce community spread of this virus.
Yeah, no fireside chat, as I mentioned earlier. We're not getting much in the way of support from the governor's office. I don't know. I hate to be a cynic. Sometimes I'm over cynical, I guess, but I think it's all political. I hear that and I think, well, wait a minute. I remember Trump coming out here just recently, and he was talking up vaccines. He was getting booed for it at his rallies, but he was telling those people, get a vaccine. I did. And I heard that, like, yeah, you got it in February in secret. You didn't tell anybody. As a matter of fact, you were downplaying the thing while everybody was getting infected, and lots of people were eventually dying of it. So way to go, Trump. But she seems to be adopting the Trump line. And of course, the Republican Party now is wanting to tout warp speed. I'm seeing that a lot. They're wanting to take credit for the development of the vaccine. So I wonder again, politically, if that doesn't play a role in her jumping on this vaccine bandwagon in just the past, like you say, couple of months.
I think it is political, because I think the governor has calculated that she really needs the votes of all the Iowans who are adamantly against the masks and other mitigation measures. So any of the closures, the hybrid options in schools, the business capacity limits. And a few weeks ago, she appeared at a kickoff event for an Ankeny school board candidate who was a very strong voice against all the COVID mitigation in schools up there. When she signed the law in May that bans local mask mandates, she was flanked by the two Ankeny moms who are supporters of the QAnon conspiracy. They go all over the country to appear at conferences with Michael Flynn and others. So I think that she's decided that she doesn't want to alienate those people who are basically COVID deniers, I would call them. But so she still wants to promote vaccines, but she doesn't want to do anything else that would alienate the COVID deniers. So I do think that your cynicism is somewhat justified here.
Somewhat justified. Okay, I'll take that. I'm going to let this roll. Now you stop it the next time, because I mean, I'm 30 seconds into this and I've already stopped the tape 2 or 3 times. So here we go.
Iowans have come to understand that this is a long game. We know that virus activity can and does fluctuate. We've shown we can respond and adapt without abandoning.
Yeah, Laura, it fluctuates. The virus does. It fluctuates straight up if you don't get vaccines and if you don't wear a mask. But she wants to blame it on the virus as opposed to the policy that's causing spread.
And when kids go back to school, I mean, this is the most concerning thing for me. I've been tracking, mainly I track the hospitalization numbers and the fatalities, because I feel that the case numbers, those can be a little bit game due to under testing. I think we're not testing enough here in Iowa. I hear from people all the time who have trouble getting tests, but the hospitalization numbers are harder to fudge. And what we're seeing in the last few weeks is the upward trend of hospitalizations in Iowa in August was comparable to what it was in October of 2020. I mean, in the summer of 2020, hospitalizations were really just creeping up very slowly. Then schools came back, and starting in late September, early October, that's when the hospitalizations started shooting up. But last year, a lot of the schools were requiring masks, and a lot of them were using every other day type of scheduling, and the variant that was circulating was not the Delta variant. So it's pretty concerning to me that we're seeing these trends in the cases and hospitalizations before school even came back. And also, we just had the Iowa State Fair. I mean, all of the transmission that happened at the Iowa State Fair is still sort of filtering through. And there are a number of people who maybe were infected at the fair who are just starting to get severely ill. We know the hospitalizations tend to lag the case numbers by 2 or 3 weeks often.
Yeah, and she'll even get to that here shortly. It's like a house of mirrors, I mention all the time on the podcast. She's going to, and I think it's in this segment, she'll talk about the fact, I'll try to let it roll without stopping it, but she'll talk about the fact that it's not like it was last November. Well, this news conference is in the first couple of days of September. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole point. We want it to not be like November when it gets to November. I mean, it's craziness. Okay, so let this roll.
Yep.
The reasonable and balanced approach that has proven effective. Especially with vaccines widely available, the rise we're currently experiencing isn't cause for panic, far from it. But it is a good reason to consider what you can do to help. Since mid-July, we've seen a steady but manageable increase in COVID-19 cases, and as expected, a corresponding increase in hospitalizations.
Okay, that bothered me a lot. When she said, as expected, an increase in hospitalizations, she made it sound like it's just a minor increase. Like I said, it's really been shooting up very quickly, and hospitals are under a lot of strain already. I mean, I've been hearing from doctors, and also an ER doc went viral last week in Marshalltown because he posted a video after a shift. He was just so frustrated. He posted a Facebook Live video about how he has to hold on to cases in his ER, stroke, heart attack, hip fracture, because he can't transfer them to an ICU like he normally would because all the ICUs in Iowa are full. And I've been hearing that from people that work at smaller rural hospitals. They're having trouble. They can't send patients to Des Moines. The Blank Children's Hospital suspended elective surgeries a few weeks ago. I mean, hospitals are really under strain. And to say, well, as expected, an increase in hospitalizations, no, this really wasn't expected. And the rapid increase also wasn't expected. Can go back to the tape now.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I mean, that's exactly what I want to do. I mean, because every word makes a difference, particularly in the world of journalism. And what she's saying here, there's a motive to this, I believe. And to just put an umbrella over the top of all of this, Laura, I've been talking a lot about Afghanistan. It's always amazing to me as Americans, and I don't know if this is an outgrowth of Hollywood, but how flippant we can become, how callous we are about dying. Mostly when it's somebody else, but even ourselves. And I tell people dying will ruin your day. I mean, it's a big deal, folks. So when you go through these statistics and you say, well, yeah, hospitalizations and deaths are up, but it's not up as much as it could have been. Yeah, well, if you're one of the fatality figures, it's a pretty big deal. Or your mom and your dad, or if you survive somebody like that, death is a bitch. I mean,
yeah, and we're back over 1,000 deaths a day nationally. Late last week, there was a day where we were almost at 3,000 deaths. So that's like a 9/11 in one day. And I mean, we're well past 600,000 Americans killed in the pandemic. So it's really a lot. I mean, it was the third leading cause of death last year, and it's on track to be the third leading cause of death this year.
And am I correct that I glanced at headlines, the infection rate for the state's at about 12%? Is that correct?
I think so. And again, those are the confirmed infections. I mean, a lot of people probably were infected last year and never got tested. I mean, I've heard from lots of people that if somebody in the family tested positive and then they asked, well, should I get my kids tested? And they said, no, you don't need to get your kids tested. So, I mean, we really don't know how many cases we've had, but 12% is in the ballpark.
Let's let this roll and you stop it the next time. If I keep talking, we'll never get through it.
We have 524 Iowans who are, some of those are out of state, but the majority are hospitalized with the virus. In November of last year, when COVID was surging, hospitalizations rose to an all-time high of 1,527. We don't want to relive that experience, and thankfully, it's unlikely that we will.
Okay,
the situation is different now, most notably
because, all right, that's very misleading. I mean, the peak of hospitalizations was an absolute crisis for Iowa. The Iowa healthcare system almost collapsed last November. In early October of last year, I interviewed a couple of people at the University of Iowa who were infectious disease specialists and have worked with COVID patients. And at that time, hospitalizations were a little above the 400 level. They didn't get to 500 or over 500 until like October 20th or so of 2020. But they were telling me already there was a lot of strain on the system just with over 400 COVID hospitalizations. And so to imply that, well, we're at 524 now, and that's so much less than 1,500. I mean, 500 plus COVID hospitalizations is a lot. And it means, as I mentioned, this Marshalltown ER doctor says he doesn't have a place to send people who have a stroke or a heart attack. He needs people who need elective surgeries that usually require a day or two in the ICU. They're having to postpone that care because there is no bed for them in the ICU. So it's already creating problems in Iowa hospitals. And I felt that she was trying to downplay it by citing that November number, as if now, it's only a third as bad as it was last November, but it's really already very high. And there's no reason to think it's coming down anytime soon because schools only just got back in session. And we know that's going to increase community transmission. And some of those people will get severely ill.
Well, the other thing that can't be overstated is the workers, the people on the front line in these hospitals. I've got a couple works in a major hospital. She's a nurse, and he's one of these people that transports people around the hospital. So he talks to everybody and all of the coworkers and everybody all over the floors everywhere. Morale's becoming a real issue. These people are put upon. They're being insulted. Used to be they weren't appreciated, but now they're being attacked on the way to work sometimes in some of these major metropolitan areas. And if these people don't go to work, if they say no mas, and go home, we're all up the creek without the proverbial paddle when it comes to the pandemic. So I just wanted to get that in there for sure.
Right. And I follow a hospital chaplain on Twitter. He tries to be semi-anonymous, but he's in Iowa. He posted on Monday that he just had one of the worst days that he's had at work during the entire pandemic. He said it's just crushing and it is discouraging. And when those people leave, it's not easy to just hire. You don't just put up an ad and hire somebody to walk in and staff your ICU bed. Those are highly, highly specialized nursing jobs, respiratory therapist jobs. When those people leave, it's very difficult to fill the gap in care.
Yeah, Dr. Andrew Nish was on the podcast last week, or maybe it was early this week, about a week or so ago, and he said they actually have some beds, but they don't have anybody to work them. So for all intents and purposes, they're overflowing. They're past capacity. Right. So you have to look at it in that context. I mean, beds, yes, but you got to have employees. You got to have people there to work it. And if they quit, that number just gets worse. Okay, here we go. Let's let it roll.
Yep.
You can stop at any time.
Because we have a vaccine. Iowa is in a strong position. According to the CDC, Iowans with at least one dose, 12 and older, is at 66.4%. 65 and older is at 91%. Still, as you all know, the virus continues to spread among the unvaccinated. In fact, of those currently hospitalized, 79% were not vaccinated when they were infected, and 90% of COVID patients currently admitted to an ICU are unvaccinated. The data reflects, I think, as you've heard for months now, that COVID-19 vaccines are highly effective at preventing serious illness, hospitalizations, and death, which ensures that more...
I'd like to mention, okay, it's good. I mean, Iowa's vaccination rate is not the worst. We're about in the middle of the pack nationally. We're definitely better than some of the states where things are under strain. But one thing that concerns me is our vaccination rate is pretty comparable to Florida's, and Florida right now is having the highest hospitalizations and daily deaths that they've had at any point during the pandemic. And so it would be a mistake to think that it can't get that bad again here because of our great vaccination rate. I mean, it's possible that we would be spared that outcome, but it's certainly not probable. And also, when she talks about people 12 and over, remember, we have whole elementary school buildings full of people who are not old enough to even be vaccinated, and they're crowded into classrooms for 6 hours a day with no social distancing and in most cases no masks. So that is going to cause a lot of issues. And even though children rarely get severely ill themselves, they can bring it home. And, a lot of kids live with somebody who has some kind of underlying health condition, diabetes, or being treated for cancer, or, any number of things. Maybe they go to the grandparents' house for babysitting after school. I mean, there are just a lot of people who are in danger from the spread that is now rapidly occurring in schools. In Newton Community Schools, they already have a couple of schools where more than 10% of kids are out due to illness, and that's literally 2 weeks into the school year.
That's one of the shocking things about it, that it's gotten so bad so quickly. You mentioned Florida. There's a news story just this morning that Miami-Dade has a school district where 13 employees have died in the past month down there in this school district. And, the kids of the future, and they get, we're concerned about them, obviously, but a lot of these people are kind of the past, and they're doing things like working in the cafeteria, driving the school buses, some teachers also. I mean, these people that should be uplifted and appreciated, how they're dying taking care of these kids in these schools. So that's another statistic with a human face that's got to be taken into account. Let me go back to the videotape here.
Beds are available for other purposes because, as you also know, it's not just patients with COVID who are being hospitalized. Hospitals are also treating patients with other illnesses, injuries, and emergent needs. Plus, we've seen an unusually high number of children with RSV. Resources in some Iowa hospitals are being stretched. We get a daily report on that. In some cases, it's due to limited bed capacity, but in many cases, and many others, it's because of workforce shortages. So we want to do our part to ensure that Iowans who need care under any circumstances can get it. And getting vaccinated is the most effective tool that we have in making that happen. It's the best way to protect yourself and those around you. And this is especially important as we start to roll into flu season.
Okay, you can stop.
Iowa, along with...
Here she is talking about things you can do. Well, okay, get vaccinated. Yes, and I'm vaccinated, so are you. What else can we do? We don't hear anything about wearing masks in public, limiting your exposure to crowded places or people outside your household. Again, like I said, hundreds of thousands of Iowans are children too young to be vaccinated. There's nothing about what they can do to reduce the spread. And I think that that's a big mistake because we know that a large portion of the people who are not vaccinated are just very resistant. I mean, there might be some people who can still be persuaded, and we should keep working on those people. But whatever it is, 30%, 35%, they just are not going to get the vaccine no matter what the governor or you or I or anybody else says. And so we need to have some tool other than just continuing to say get vaccinated, because right now that's not good enough for our hospitals.
At the beginning of her remarks, I think it was maybe one of these tapes that's coming up, because I've got a couple of other clips that I wanted to preview also, but she talks about the fact that the reason that she's holding the news conference and her prepared remarks particularly were to put this in context.
Right.
And I know at one point there was a question at this news conference when they were saying, well, what are you doing? What is this? I mean, what's the point of this news conference, more or less? Mm-hmm. Well, putting in context is another way to me of saying spinning it. I'm putting it in context, but I'm putting the spin on it that I would like. And that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and she really wasn't putting it in context, because the context is what we've been seeing in late August is similar to the trajectory we were on in late October 2020. So that's really bad. I mean, the one thing she also didn't get into, which I've been following on the website, is the new daily admissions to hospitals. So that's how many people in any 24-hour period were admitted to hospital with COVID-19. And last year at this time, it would be, 20, 30, 40 people. And by late September, it was consistently above 50. And by late October, it was in the 70, 80 or more range. We're already in late August, we already were having more than 70 people a day admitted to hospitals. And a lot of those COVID patients have long hospital stays. So it's very concerning to me that I don't think that we can really get ahead of this hospitalization curve, not without drastically decreasing transmission in the community. And that's what the governor just isn't talking about, other than getting vaccinated. And it's great that she's encouraging people to get vaccinated, but it's just not sufficient, right? It's necessary, but not sufficient.
Excellent point. Putting things in context means that you're having supporting facts and data, and that's sorely missing here. Let's see if this goes a little further.
Much of the nation is experiencing an
No,
increase in virus activity.
that's the end of that particular tape.
Okay, right.
Okay, so and we're going to run out of time here if I don't get to these very quickly. But here comes let's see if I can bring this up.
But it varies.
I have to pause it there.
Mhm.
So this next question is going to come. Yeah, you know who this is? It's a gentleman here to her right, I think, a reporter that poses this question. Let's see how this.
To talk to,
Governor,
but it varies.
Governor, what would you say to parents of children who are too young to be vaccinated and have chronic
That's Tony
health
Lynn,
issues
Des Moines Register.
Yeah, okay, and it's to her left. So
Their
that
health
make them susceptible to COVID and don't feel safe sending them to a classroom with other kids who might not be wearing masks?
So we have an online option. The other thing that I would say to them is to continue to talk to their doctors. I would say that a majority of the parents several of the parents that I've talked to that had kids with underlying conditions or had an IEP or was concerned about their capability of learning had more issues with the mask than they actually did.
okay, that's
several
a
of the
big one.
parents.
Yeah.
Several of the parents. She's talking about those Ankeny QAnon moms. It's
Oh,
because we had tens of thousands of Iowa children were in schools last year that were requiring masks, and we heard about very few problems. There were a few activists, like these people in Ankeny, who claimed that their children were adversely affected by masks. There is no scientific research that supports the idea that masks are harmful for children. But what she said at the beginning, she said, well, we have an online option. That's not accurate. Not every school district is offering online school this year. And those that are, it looks very different from last year. My own children in the Des Moines Public Schools were doing the online instruction last year. And it was like a class. I mean, it was a Zoom meeting, basically, where they had a teacher and peers and they met online at certain times on certain days. What the Des Moines Public Schools and what other school districts are offering this year for an online option is not a class and a regular meeting with a teacher. It's like a pre-recorded lectures and a self-guided curriculum. And then occasionally you check in with a teacher. I mean, it is nothing like equivalent to classroom instruction. And so that line that she said there, that was actually quoted in the lawsuit that was filed last Friday by the ACLU on behalf of the families of kids with disabilities, who said that this is illegal under the Americans with Disabilities Act for the state not to provide equal access to educational opportunities for their children.
and I've looked at that a little bit, this claim about masks harming children, and it has to do with causing acne, perhaps, and some elevated red blood cells or something like that. There's no science to back this up. It just begs common sense credulity. I mean, what a mask? We're in a pandemic. This is harming children, but that's what she's saying.
Right.
All right, let's see if I can get this to play a little. I'll back that up just a little bit here. Hear that again.
Learning had more issues with the mask than they actually did without the mask. So it's their right. We have to remember it's their right to wear a mask. They can make sure that they're in an N95. They can use a face shield. There's various things that we can do to help mitigate their chances of being exposed. But again, it's a law in Iowa. I believe parents can visit with their doctors, and then they will make an informed decision on what's the best thing for their child. And that's where I believe that it needs to stay.
Governor, you've pushed for the opportunity for kids to be in school in person.
Yeah.
And now there's this group of parents.
Katerina Sestarich, if I would.
We're scared for our children. And so now they might not have the opportunity to be in person safely. I mean,
Well, but there's also parents that have adverse reactions. Their kids have had severe reverse reactions to the mask. So you have to balance both of that. Again, that's why it's a law. We'll start there. Parents understand and know the health of their children. They'll know what they need to do.
Yeah.
Again,
Again,
the severe reaction. Yeah.
Yeah. The law says schools can't require masks, but it doesn't say that the governor or the public health officials can't encourage people to wear masks. And it's just not accurate to say that a lot of kids had severe adverse reactions to the masks. And frankly, if parents feel that strongly about their kids not wearing a mask, maybe those parents can keep their kids at home and homeschool, because the parents of kids who just want their kids to be able to go to school in a safe environment that complies with the CDC guidelines, they're not getting that. They have zero options right now in Iowa.
Well, let me let this roll. It's just, I always hear, and they always want to go back to the parents thing. I always think of George and Betty Warnock when I was back in the newsroom back in the 80s. My God, these people were putting kids in dog boxes. I mean, you can't trust the good sense of people when it comes to treatment of children. In all cases, obviously, there has to be some oversight. The state needs to be involved in this a little bit, but they want to turn it all over to the parents. And then they talk about these masks, and I always think about a full face shield that hockey players play in. I mean, I know guys that play hockey for hours a day wearing a full face shield. I mean, you could send your kid to school in a hockey helmet, they wouldn't have any reaction. Never saw a hockey player have a
Right.
reaction. Yeah, here we
That's
go.
right.
They are the best person and individual to decide that course of action for their children. And that applies on in both cases. So if you're a parent where that potentially that mask adversely affects your child or their capability to be able to learn, there's data on both sides that support mask and the negative effects of mask. And so they're going to have to take that information, just like vaccines, and make an informed decision as to what is best for their child. We don't know, they don't know.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, Director Garcia. Would you recommend students go to school with masks on?
It doesn't really matter because it's law at this point.
Well,
it is a law.
The mandate is a law, but a recommendation.
It is a law that elected officials
That was
that are
Stephen
elected by
Miller of the Des Moines Register. Yeah, that was a widely quoted point where she would not allow the Department of Public Health Director, Kelly Garcia, to answer that question that was directed to her. Does she personally recommend that parents send their kids to school in a mask? And we learned a few minutes later in the gaggle why the governor didn't want Kelly Garcia to answer that question, because she told reporters that she does send her own children to school in a mask. But when people tried to follow up, and a reporter from the Channel 5 TV, Eva Anderson, tried to ask, she tried to refer back to that both sides, there's data on both sides. And she asked Kelly Garcia, can you just acknowledge that the data, that masks are harmful is just so minuscule? And the governor's press secretary, Pat Garrett, he interrupted and he didn't let her finish her question, nor did he let Kelly Garcia answer. And he said, I'll send you material on that. Of course, the studies that he supposedly emailed, they didn't show that masks were harmful for kids. And they really misrepresented what evidence there is on masks. There are some studies that suggest that maybe it's inconclusive, or maybe especially the cloth masks maybe aren't as beneficial as N95 masks. But even the people who have spoken out about that, like Dr. Michael Osterholm of Minnesota, he's a very strong advocate of universal masking in schools. He just thinks people should be wearing N95 masks or something that's more effective than your typical cloth mask.
Yeah, that's just, let me see if I can get back to this.
But, she kept saying it's a law, but the law does not say that you can't recommend or encourage someone to wear a mask. It just says that the school can't require it.
Right. And she references the fact that the legislature, people elected these politicians to rule on this. Well, they also elected, I saw Todd Magel, I think, from KCCI make an excellent point. He said they also elected people for their local school boards to make these decisions, and they're not being allowed to do that. They also elected mayors of their cities and city council people, and they're being overruled by the governor, basically. And that falls into be careful what you wish for, because there's new surveys out. The majority of Americans support mask mandates and they support vaccinations. Well, that's Americans. That's a national level. That's a federal thing. Well, guess who trumps? No, not a very good word, but the governor may be overruled on these matters by the federal government, just like the governor has overruled the city mayors and the local school boards. That's the way I feel about it.
The next thing I'll be watching is to see whether this ACLU lawsuit, whether they can get a federal judge to impose a temporary injunction on that law that bans mask mandates. Because if they do, it wouldn't immediately impose a mask mandate, but several school boards, Des Moines, Iowa City, probably Ames, I assume Cedar Rapids, Davenport, many of the large school districts, their school boards are ready to approve mask mandates right now in accordance with the public health guidance if the activity of this law were suspended by a court. And I don't know that will happen, but that's certainly something that the plaintiffs are seeking in that ACLU lawsuit. And it's something that occasionally happens. If a judge finds that a lawsuit is likely to succeed on the merits, they sometimes block that law from being in effect. So we'll have to see.
Hmm. Let's let this run out here. We just got a few seconds to go.
Iowans and constituents across this state listened to the people that they represent, passed a bill, sent it to my desk, and it was signed into law.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, in fact, Garrett ended the press conference there, so none of us could follow up to say, hey, that law doesn't say that you can't encourage a mask, people to wear a mask to try to reduce transmission. And also, again, like I said, the question was not really addressed to the governor. The question was addressed to the Department of Public Health Director, Kelly Garcia. Does she recommend that? And I have been very disappointed in the Department of Public Health all throughout this pandemic. I don't feel that their guidance has ever been a very strong compared to what the CDC had. But lately, it's gotten even worse. And the updated guidance they issued for schools in early August did not recommend masks at all, even for unvaccinated people. And again, like I said, we have whole school buildings of elementary school children where none of the students are vaccinated because they're not old enough. And the Department of Public Health says nothing about that. All it says is you should allow students and people to voluntarily wear a mask if they want to. And so it's just a joke. I mean, they're not doing contact tracing. They're not encouraging quarantines anymore. Hybrid options for schools are not possible. Schools can't close temporarily and move to online instruction, like we mentioned in the Newton schools right now, where they have more than 10% of students absent due to illness. A year ago, they could have requested permission from the state to go temporarily to online instruction, but they can't do that. That provision of state law lapsed on June 30th. So they're just stuck. And I've been wondering what we do if a lot of bus drivers or teachers get sick and they don't have enough substitutes. I'm not sure how we're going to keep these schools operating, but right now they don't have a way to ask permission to close temporarily. They would have to make up all that instructional time at the end of the school year. And that's just a non-starter. That's way too expensive for most school districts to even contemplate.
Well, I have to apologize a little bit. Those two clips took a lot longer than I thought, mostly because I wanted to talk or comment over most of it, Laura. But out of the news conference there, those two clips that we just saw, how much of the news conference was that? How long was the news conference in its entirety?
It was a relatively short news conference. I want to say that she had maybe she and Director Garcia spoke for about 15 minutes, and then she took only a few questions. She didn't take a lot of questions. Many of her press conferences are more like 30 minutes long total, including the questions, and that one was considerably shorter than that.
Well, you kind of tell at the end of it there. I mean, I don't want to read too much into body language, but she kind of slaps her book together and turns around and walks off. And people are trying to pose questions, and Garrett is ending it, as you mentioned. And I look at it and say, again, to go back to my earlier comments, we're in a pandemic. It's life and death out there, folks. People are dying of this. Everybody wants information. Everybody wants data. Everybody wants a steady hand on the till. They want to believe that the governor knows what she's doing. And you're looking at this and saying, what? She's kind of turning on her heel and stomping out of the room. If there's ever a time when you would want to take a little extra time and answer questions and speak to the people of Iowa, this would be it. I mean, unless maybe Nebraska takes up arms and invades us or something like that. I can't think of a time when the governor of the state would want to visit with the people of Iowa more from a podium than in a governor's news conference. And I just find that a little bit shocking. And I'll say this in closing here as we wrap up. It occurred to me as I was waiting to put this online to get together with you, Laura. We're coming into this election season again. I saw an article today that Reynolds is expected to run for governor of the state of Iowa again. Well, when she does, you're going to see nonstop television advertising. I mean, ad nauseum, as we know, millions of dollars spent on these political ads over and over and over again. Well, why doesn't the governor use a little bit of that bully pulpit, maybe not campaign funds, but why isn't she on the air? Why aren't we running PSAs? Why aren't we doing news, advising people how to make it through this pandemic? We'll get all of that crap anybody wants, and nobody can stand here in just a matter of months. But the governor is strangely silent at this critical time.
I think she, like I mentioned, I don't think she wants to alienate the COVID deniers that are a large portion of the Republican base right now. And I think her story, and she's sticking to it, and I'm sure we'll hear this in a lot of campaign ads, that Iowa took a balanced approach to the pandemic and it worked and it was effective and we were able to get on with our lives. But really, we have very high case numbers, and per capita, we have high deaths compared to a lot of states. We should not be in the situation that we're in. We should have been doing a lot better than the states that got hit earlier on in the pandemic. And it's not always the case. But the governor, I mean, she does not want to reimpose any restrictions. That's very clear. I mean, I can't imagine
Oh, yeah.
that she would ever allow schools to go online. I can't imagine that she would ever bring back any kind of masking requirement or capacity restriction. She is just done with that. And that last Thursday, the press conference, they were announcing some changes to the state website, that they were going to be updating it 3 times a week instead of once. But really, those updates on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, those are very minimal and superficial. Most of the information on the website is only going to be updated once a week, late Wednesday night, and it's just not good enough. I mean, like I said, we're at the level where the point where we are now is comparable to where we were in late October of 2020, but all of the signals coming from state government are like, nothing to see here, folks, don't worry too much, it's really not going to be that bad. And I'm concerned. I really am, that our hospitals are going to be in a much worse position in just a few weeks from now.
What would you tell people? How much do you personally, and how much do the experts that you talk to, maybe more importantly, trust that data that's on those websites? How accurate is that?
Well, a lot of people have questions about the case numbers. I mean, we're under testing, as I mentioned. So the case numbers, I don't know that that really reflects the spread in the community. And I know that the state, they stopped releasing details about the nursing home exposure, the outbreaks in nursing homes, and then what numbers they have released. Clark Kaufman of the Iowa Capital Dispatch has been all over this with regular records requests to try to get those numbers. And the numbers seem to be lowballed. When they do report that there's an outbreak, like currently one is going on at the Iowa Veterans Home, along with 14 or 15 other nursing homes, the case numbers that the state reports are lower than what people are hearing, the people who have relatives living in the home, who are getting regular emails from the nursing home staff. So I don't think those numbers are reliable at all. The hospitalization numbers, I think that those are probably pretty accurate. The fatalities, I think, are also fairly accurate, except there's a delay. So whatever deaths that they announced this week, most of them didn't occur within the last 7 days. They probably occurred sometime 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. But I do think periodically I check and compare Iowa's fatality numbers to the CDC numbers on their website. And I think they pretty much line up, except that there's that time lag. But the case numbers, I just don't follow the case numbers that closely, because I don't think that they give us as accurate a reflection as the hospitalizations and the deaths.
Okay, well, this turned out to be kind of a long one. I have a little more flexibility with these live lines because when they work, and I think we maybe got a slow or late start here with this particular Facebook podcast. I'll see if I can fix that for next time. But I do have a little more flexibility to go a little longer, so we got a little more in there. Anything that I didn't cover here that you want to mention, Laura? I know you've got a couple of more things in the till here for Bleeding Heartland that people are going
Yep,
to want
I
to
have
catch up.
records requests and things, some exclusive reporting about state government coming soon, but I'll just be continuing to track. I still think the pandemic is the biggest story out there. I mean, I'd love to get back to just writing about campaigns and elections and some of the other minutiae of state government, but I have other projects that I've put on hold for weeks or months, because every day there's some other big COVID story that seems very important to cover.
Well, I've been running the little lower third, the Chiron, as they call it, the ticker at the bottom there with the website address for bleedingheartland.com. And then, of course, also up now is patreon.com, Bleeding Heartland. And folks, if you like this kind of reporting, and if you appreciate and support the muckraking that I love that word that Laura Belin is doing, go to Patreon and throw her a few bucks and help with those open records requests and make it possible. Folks, that's going to wrap it up. I want to thank you again, Laura, for coming on this edition of the Podcast by George Live Line.
Thanks, George. Always a pleasure to be here. And Patreon really is helpful because it's a predictable source of income that covers quite a lot of my operating expenses.
That's great. Well, you see that running along the bottom of the screen there. And folks, if you just want to follow along Podcast by George for free, you can get us on Facebook where this stream is. It'll also be repurposed on YouTube. And then, of course, it's on iTunes in audio format. But you can just select the platform that you like very easily by going to podcastbygeorge.com. And all of the little icons are there. Just click on one. They all have places where you can sign up and get it for free and get it when it releases. But that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. That's all there is. And there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.